Family law is an exciting field. It's a stimulating field because it involves legal issues, psychological issues, and financial issues. It's also exciting because it provides many different types of skills and ways to practice as an attorney. So basically, there are different ways that you can practice family law. You have litigation, you have negotiation, you have mediation, you have something called collaborative divorce. So you have many processes to do family law in. And there are many issues that come up with family law. You have divorce, you have custody, you have parental access, you have alimony, you have child support, you have tax issues, you have working out parental agreements, you have same-sex marriage issues, domestic partnership issues. So there's lots of ways to practice what I call family law in the 21st century. Some people joke when they know my practice of 26 years and they say, working with Sherry is like breaking up with Margaret Mead. Because basically, she's an anthropologist for those of you who may not know. You really do need to look at people's problems. All of us are touched by family law, professionally or personally. So this is an interesting area to go into. The materials that I have provided to you take you through the interview to trial. So they're very comprehensive materials and will be useful in your practice. Whether you practice family law or live it, I think this will be helpful for you. Okay? So let's get started. I'm going to give you samples of cases, real cases that I've actually had, and then take you through the process. Okay? A standard typical case that you might get in family law practice is where one person comes to you and they want to break up with their spouse, and they have a house, they have a pension, they have 2 children. That's a typical case, okay? And I had that case, and they need to figure out the division of the assets, which is property division. They need to figure out child support. They might have to figure out alimony or spousal support. And in this particular case, it was a large custody battle, okay? So I will refer to these cases throughout the lecture. A second case, so that's case 1, okay, the typical case. The second case involved hidden assets where one spouse had their own business and was not reporting all their income or their assets. Not to mention destruction to the family with alcohol. Okay, usually those things go together, business problems, personal problems, right? So let's call that case 2, and let's call that the hidden asset case, okay? So case 1 is traditional case. Case 2 is the hidden asset case, okay? Case 3 we'll call the special needs child case, all right? Special needs children is a very important area and comes up often in divorce. 1 out of 2 marriages break up in the United States. With special needs children, it's 85 to 90%. So don't be surprised if you may see this type of case, okay? Now in this case 3, you have issues of trying to set up 2 homes instead of 1 with a child who has very particular needs. And in addition to this case, there was enormous amount of wealth, and there were issues about retirement plans and deferred compensation. So that's case 3, okay? And the last case that involves family law basics in general is a same-sex couple who's deciding whether to marry or not, where it may be legal. In some places it's not. And how to set up a prenuptial agreement for this particular couple, a domestic partnership agreement, or whether they will get married and carry on with further agreements. Those are some of your typical examples in family law. So now we need to start to the beginning. How do you get contacted in a family law case? You might have a phone call. You might have a phone call from a relative in the middle of the night. You might get an email, okay? Or you might have someone just walk into your door. Or you might work for a firm and they may hand you this problem. How do you deal with it? What I would recommend is first is the client interview, okay? Now, if it's going to be a mediation session, then you will meet with the two people together. If one person contacts you and wants advice individually, and that may lead to negotiations or litigation, then you would probably just meet with one spouse, okay? Most times it's better to meet in person, but with today's technology, or if someone's disabled and cannot meet, or if they're in another locale, you may use Skype, or you may do it with a webcam, or you even may do it on the telephone or online. I highly recommend, if possible, that the first interview be done in person. Family law is a very personal relationship. Now, it's also a highly emotional field. And what I recommend is a team approach. Do not be afraid or let an ego get in the way of utilizing experts that may be helpful in a family law case. What are some of those experts? Psychologists, either for individual therapy of the person you're representing, or for their spouse or family counseling. Psychologists are also used sometimes in custody situations for forensic evaluations, or sometimes just to help develop the parenting plans and access. A second type of professional that may be part of your team is an accountant or a financial planner. It's very important that people understand their budgets, now, the past, during the marriage, and future. And they may need the help of a good paralegal or a financial planner to look at these budgets. And you may need lawyers in other fields. When there's businesses involved, you may need a lawyer to help analyze what's going on with the business, or if there's lawsuits involving the business. Okay, like the case I told you about, the hidden asset case, there were enormous business liabilities. There were lawsuits hitting both spouses left and right from the businesses. We brought in a business attorney, okay? And when it's over, you may need an estate and wills lawyer to do the wills and estate planning for the new family. So that's what you may need as the team. So let's look first at the client interview and see what happens at the client interview in family law, okay? There's certain basic information that you want to collect, and I have provided that to you in the materials. You will have an intake sheet, and you will ask them about their lifestyle. You will ask them, first of all, are they still living together? Where are the children? How are the bills paid? What is the income of both spouses? What are the assets in general? What are the debts in general? And are there any emergency issues that the family needs to deal with? And you will probably get also into the marital history, even though many states now have no fault. In fact, all of them do now. You probably will also get into is if there's any abuse or domestic violence issues. It's a very important situation. And that's difficult. People don't always volunteer that. So you have to slowly try to process that with people, okay? So those are some of the basic areas you need to develop in the client consult, is collecting that information. And then what people expect in the client consult is to provide them with what their rights are, some of their options, and as the title of this course talks about, the art of family law, what are some creative solutions to the problem? How can we have this family move on to the next step with as least damage as possible? Okay? So, some of the issues that you want to touch on in the client interview are the same as the issues that we spoke about earlier. What are the assets? Let's look at different types of assets, okay? You want to identify various types of assets at the client interview, if possible, in general. Is there any real estate? Are there any retirement plans? And retirement funds are very broad. They may involve 401ks, they may involve IRAs, they may involve deferred comp, annuities, so you want to look at that. You want to look at basically in certain states if there's any licenses and degrees. You want to identify businesses. You want to identify all bank accounts. Those are some of the assets, okay? And then the debts, many of you know, student loans, promissory notes, mortgages, any money owed to anybody, okay? You want to know generally what your client is looking for, or a potential client. Do they envision a joint custody situation where they share the child back and forth? Do they envision most of the time the child at one home rather than the other? What about decision-making for the child or children? On medical decisions, educational decisions, do they envision joint decision-making, or they think that one has superior knowledge or more knowledge or has been more involved and should be the final decision maker? These are some of the areas you want to probe. If there's a large disparity in income, you might want to probe if there's a need for alimony or spousal support. And you definitely will have to figure out the child support, which we'll get to. There's formulas for child support. So you want to try to figure out what's going on in each case. You want to see what type of case it is. Is it what I call the super spouse case, where one party has been the primary caretaker of the children and the main financial person, and the other one has had minimal contributions? Is it a young marriage where it's just starting out, there's not much assets, there's no children, but maybe there's an educational degree or a new business? You want to try to develop, this is important, your theory of the case. One of the key concepts that I write about in my book and on my website is the theory of the case. Developing a theory of a case is extremely important. It is what is unique about this family and this situation that you are now going to educate everyone involved in the case, whether it's the spouse, whether it's a co-mediator, whether it's the law clerk of a judge, or whether it's a judge. You always want to put on your theory of the case, okay? So for example, the case with the hidden assets. That theory of the case may be that one spouse was more involved with raising the children, the other one had alcohol issues, a lack of contribution, and that they've dissipated assets by letting the businesses fall into ruins, by not paying obligations, and therefore maybe it's not a 50-50 split on the assets, okay? The theory of the case with the special needs child is that Yes, we have two people divorcing, but the primary interest of an autistic child has to be met first. And let's look at all those needs and see if there's a need beyond 21, where child support usually ends, or 18 in some states. Can we develop a special needs trust? Will the parties agree? If necessary, will they work either with a team mediation approach with two lawyers or negotiating good faith? That's the theory of that case, is that this child might need help for life in medical areas and educational areas, okay? So in a case where both did their best, both have jobs, both have pensions, that might be a case where it's an equal marriage, it should be an equal split. And that's the theory of the case. Where there's domestic violence, you might need order of protections. And you might have to have certain ways around direct communication between the two parties. That's the theory of a case, okay? So you have to get to know what's going on in each family, all right? Now, after the initial consultation comes the preparation, okay? So, what's involved with preparation in a divorce? Basically, it's the collection of documents, and it's filling out a form in many states called the Statement of Net Worth. The Statement of Net Worth is your roadmap for the case, okay? The Statement of Net Worth, each party will list their income, their expenses, their assets, and their debt. They will also put down if they need attorney fees, expert fees, temporary support, temporary child support. So be very careful on that form. If you do not know the value of a particular item, let's say the value of a business, because they ask for values on those forms, then put down an amount to be determined. Don't guess the wrong value, okay? So what type of documents would be helpful in a divorce? Can anyone make any suggestions? Yes?
Bank statements?
Absolutely bank statements, because bank statements will show how much money there is now, and prior bank statements will show the history of transactions, which will show how the family spends money, and most importantly, it will show transfers, okay? There's a tendency when a marriage starts to go south, although south looks good in the winter from here, but when it goes in a wrong direction, for monies to disappear or monies to be transferred. Sometimes it goes to family members, sometimes it goes to paramours. So it's very important to look at the bank statements to determine those transfers of funds, okay? And that's when an accountant might come in handy, or a financial planner. But you definitely want bank statements, and not in all cases, but in many cases, from date of marriage till the present. Now, that's a long time. In the interest of saving trees, we are doing things by disk and email now, so that before we used to have boxes and reams of documents come to the office in discovery requests. So now it's a little simpler to look at all these documents, okay? So bank statements is a very good one. Anyone else?
Tax returns?
Tax returns are critical, okay? Tax returns will not only show income, but they will show interest and dividends, which will show assets, okay? And it may also show about real estate, and it may also show about businesses, Schedule Cs, etc. So the tax returns are critical. You want joint tax returns, you want individual returns, you want business returns. A lot of people forget to ask for business returns, okay? What else? Anyone? Yes?
Stock certificates and retirement funds?
Absolutely. Retirement funds are critical. And what I would say is that a resume is a very good idea. Why? Because a resume will list all prior employers. And with prior employers, you may have retirement funds from other employers. So it's not just the current retirement fund that's critical, but all the retirement funds acquired during the marriage, okay? So that's a very important document. Do you want to know my favorite document? The best document to ask for, okay, is a loan application. All loan applications, right? Because on the statement of net worth in a divorce, many times they try to make it out that their income is deteriorating and their assets are deteriorating or they don't have that much. Not always. You know, some people give full disclosure and they really just want to fairly work it out, but it's not a surprise that happens. But when you look at the loan applications, it's amazing what you'll find. Now, sometimes the loan application is not correct. They're trying to puff their assets or income to get a loan. But many times you'll find a piece of real estate that wasn't on the net worth. So loan applications are critical. And you either get that by your client, or I'm going to talk to you about the discovery process, about how to get documents that you can't get from your client. And of course, there are other ways like subpoenas to get these things. So that's a very important document. You want all real estate deeds. You want credit card statements, okay? Credit card statements show lifestyle, and credit card statements may show dissipation of assets, particularly on a lover. So in many states, dollar for dollar, you can get credit for money spent on a lover outside the marriage, what we used to call paramour, okay? So credit cards are important, all right? And if someone's saying that they don't make much income, they have a cash business, but their credit card shows a lifestyle where they're buying many things, there's a disparity, that's very important, okay? So these are some of the basic documents. Anything in every financial document. I did provide you a list of financial documents to request, okay? And that's in your materials. So you want to collect these documents, okay? You also want your client to write up the marital history, and most importantly, to write up contributions to marriage, okay? So everything they did in the marriage to help their spouse, to help their children, and what the other spouse did or did not do. That's very critical. Contributions to marriage, okay? So that takes you through the preparation stage that you can get from your client. The statement of net worth, collecting documents, writing up marital history, 2 other areas. There's a worksheet I've provided to you called a parenting plan, and it's also on my website. And the parenting plan is critical for each party to fill out because it will talk about what they anticipate with the parental access in terms of where the child will live when and decision making, okay? So that's very important document that they fill out. The next area of preparation is to watch the joint credit lines and to watch all accounts that you have a beneficiary on. So to make sure that the person you're representing is still the beneficiary on the health insurance, the retirement funds, the life insurance. While a divorce is pending, there is not to be transfer of assets or removal from beneficiaries. Because if that is done, then you may need to do some emergency action, which we will talk about in a little while. Okay? Now, also you have to watch home equity lines and credit lines. Sometimes one spouse takes out the money, and then that creates a joint debt for both spouses, but one spouse never got use of the money. I've had that case, and it's a difficult trial to then, and I've gotten the money back dollar for dollar, but it's difficult. You have to show that one spouse never had anything to do with using the money. It's better if you can catch it early. So if there are these joint credit lines, I advise that either they take it out and split it, or if one's not getting money for the bills, they take it out to utilize it, or close those accounts. Certainly don't leave it open, and then the other spouse takes it, okay?